Good morning, everyone. It's so good to be together. Hello, hello. Thank you so much for your patience. And you know what? It was all in perfect timing because it is now 10:10, which is like one of those beautiful angel repeating numbers. Okay. All right, let me get everything going here. And there we are. Everything's open. So good to have everybody with us. Hello, hello. We've got the amazing Lowell Johnson with us today. And I barely had a moment to say hello to him when in fact I actually wanted to pick his brain for like 15 minutes before I let everybody in. But then I thought that's not fair. You guys need to be part of that conversation too.
We'll find another time to do that. And
Yes.
because really, I was telling Kira in the warm up before this that
Yes.
normally when we get going, we leave most of the good stuff on the green room floor. And so
Yes.
we don't want not to include that stuff in the conversation because once you get in the flow, you're in the flow. We haven't
That is
rehearsed any of
exactly
this.
right.
Whatever's supposed to come out comes out today.
That is exactly right. I love it. I love it. Yeah. So Lowell, I have to ask you, do you, for some reason, I thought you said in one of your interviews that you live in the Northwest. Is that right?
Um, my if you ask me where my home address was these days, it would be Santa Rosa, California.
Okay. Okay.
I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Minnesota, and I happen to be in Minnesota now for a short period of time.
Okay.
But I was in the hotel business. I lived in 9 different states, and so
Oh, wow. Wow.
home was
Okay.
where you were on that particular day.
That is awesome. For some reason, I
Mhm.
thought you were like local near me. So yeah, but I'm in the Seattle area. So we have an amazing group here gathered today, and I want to tell you a little bit about our Wisdom Soup group, just so you know how like this is a really special community that I feel very, very close to. That Wisdom Soup, I started it way back when I was in really the beginning of my spiritual journey, and I was really looking for community. And I don't know about you, Lowell, but did you go through the time when you were like, all of my old friends don't understand me anymore?
I'm still in that state, but I know when it began. Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yes, yes. And so what I did is I rented a theater in downtown Bellevue and I put an ad on Meetup and I was just hoping somebody would come and like 25 people came and I did it as like a speaker thing. So I was sort of the first sacrificial lamb. I was the first speaker and then I had different speakers every month and I ended up meeting some amazing people and some of those people are still close friends of mine. And so it became, and then when we used to always do it in person, and then when COVID hit, we moved to online. And now we do this monthly. And it's a cool way of introducing the people that are attracted to this group are the old souls, the people who are curious, open-minded, who want to be expanded, who are interested, right, to hear new perspectives. And so I love bringing people that I find that, that are bringing something fascinating to the table and to share it with this group, people that they might not have otherwise found, although you're pretty findable these days, to be honest. So
I, I don't know what happened recently, but you and I had done podcasts timing wise on Ethereal Edge. And I was
Oh,
telling Wendy before we began, I don't know what happened in that phenomenon. But that interview I did there, the first one with
yeah.
Tracy and Tara, had 195,000 views.
So
No, and
incredible.
what was the trigger behind that? I've
Mm.
heard from people all over the planet. It wasn't that I hadn't had those experiences before, but
Yeah.
right now, energetically, something else is going on, and
Yes.
lots more people are reaching out to get some comprehension of just what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
And we all need touchstones. I need them. When you people show up and we have these exchanges, you didn't come to listen to me because
Right.
I expect in this exchange, there's something meant for me to get out of this too. And
Yeah.
here we are. Let's see
Yeah.
what happens today.
I love that. I love it. And yeah, you're so right. So I have to tell everybody what drew me to reach out and to ask you to come and join us. It was your absolutely incredible story That, and it's a dream. I think it's a dream that we all have had. It's like anybody here who has read the Narnia books and you've dreamt about walking through the wardrobe into another world, right? The idea that there are worlds around us that maybe are existing, that are right so close by, that are just walk through the wardrobe and you're on the other side and an adventure begins, and something that is mind expanding, life expanding, heart expanding. Well, it happened to Lowell for real. It really
Yeah.
happened. And so the picture behind him, I'm assuming, is a picture
Mhm.
about what you saw.
Yeah, that's the White Pyramid in the middle of the first level of Telos.
Oh my word. Okay, so I don't
Yeah.
want to jump ahead and spoil it for everyone, but that is where we're going today.
Well,
That is the awesomeness that's in store for us today.
look, when we get to the end of these interviews, everybody asks the same thing, not just me, of anybody at the end. What do you want people to take away from this? And so,
Yeah.
what I want to take away from it before, if you want me to tell us, I will be happy to do that.
Yes.
It's an incredible story, but let me put this into perspective.
Yeah.
It took me a few years to have a few more experiences to understand that Telos wasn't going to be the only story I was going to tell.
Yeah.
Because a year later, I would have an interaction with a hybrid that I didn't know before. And during that interaction, over a 3-week period, she's going to put me in touch with light beings. And
Wow.
that will be photographed. So
Wow.
that if anybody has any questions whether this phenomenon takes place, here are the pictures. The
Wow.
first time she took them with her camera and sent them to me, and the second time, which I didn't, none of this I thought was designed for me. And I just kind of went through it. And the second time she said, I want you to give me your phone. And so when she photographed what happened on a 3 o'clock Saturday afternoon and out in the daylight,
Yeah.
she did it with my phone. She said, so no one can ever say that these pictures were taken somewhere else and altered. And they'll always be in your cloud. And
Right.
so I've had a series of multi-dimensional experiences. That whole thing is a thing.
Wow.
Understanding that we're straddling dimensions. There are people in your audience here today that have
Mhm.
had experiences that are beyond what our five senses in this density would say is reasonable. But they're
Yeah.
having them anyway.
Yeah.
They
It's
have
real.
them, and they have the ability to come back and report on them with the rest of us. But they've found a tribe that they can have these conversations with.
That's
And
the key,
although
isn't it?
theirs are not the same as mine, and they're still validating for the rest of us that this
Yeah.
magic is going on with all of us a little bit at a time. And as time goes on, I just noticed more people have come out of the woodwork. Like after that October
Yeah.
thing with Ethereal Edge, it got your attention, and here we
Yeah.
are, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so will you, I know you have told that story, but not to our group. We haven't heard it yet. And we would love to hear, if you don't mind,
No,
starting
I
with,
won't. I'm going to try and compress it into the time
yes,
allotted,
thank
but
you. Yeah. So you were out on a hike. You are in Mount Shasta on
yeah,
vacation. No intention of this. It's not like you did a
no.
ceremony, didn't it? You just happened to be on a walk. And then what happened?
Well, I'll just give a brief lead up to the conditions that set all this in motion.
Okay.
For a few years now, I had found a meditative state. 2 years behind that, in 2016, I had had a TIA, a mini stroke. And in
Oh,
my mind, it was the trigger for everything that followed after that. Because within that 30-day recovery period after that, my surgeon had suggested that I might want to consider meditation as one brand of therapy. Well, I'd always wanted to do that. And so for the next 30 days, when I'm going to be laid up, it's probably be a good time to explore it. Anyway, make a long story short, by the first part of February, the dots had connected, and I found a TM, Transcendental Meditation Trainer, not a mile from where I lived. And from that, over the next 2 years, everything changed. As soon as I found that meditative state, changes in my body took place. over a 6-month period, I lost 35 pounds without thinking I was doing it. I
Wow.
didn't intend to go on a diet. I didn't intend to get on some, you know, regimen of exercise. It just happened. And once I found that zone,
Yeah.
the universe makes you crave different things. And so I account this change in my physicality to the universe and just
Wow.
letting it take control.
Mhm.
Um, then I started having these, I didn't understand the nature of bilocation then. I understood having kind of vivid dreams and recalling them later, but it won't be until later that I understand the nature of an out of body experience. And here
Mhm.
is the new stuff that's been going on in the last few months.
Mm.
I can appreciate bilocation and going other places and understanding exactly what happened. What I didn't comprehend is I'm leaving my body to do that. And here are kind of the symptoms that worked for me. When I first learned how to meditate, like the third day when I got into that zone, I was sitting upright on a couch. I knew my butt was on the cushion. I knew my feet were on the floor. I knew my hands were on my legs, but I couldn't feel any of that. It was just, I was part of all of this. Well, when I have these experiences now, I'll find a spot where I thought I went into meditation and then it's almost like I took a nap. But and when I come back, I'm getting lucid, but like my body isn't responding. It
Mhm.
feels like my hands are there, but I can't feel them. There's no sensation. Then all of a sudden, it's like I feel the physicality of it again. And it's, oh, I finally came back into my body. And you don't understand any of that until it's happened a few times.
Yeah. Wow.
Once you kind of put a notion to that, now you recognize it for what it was. So
Mhm.
we want to understand the physical mechanics of it all. My little Capricorn brain works that way. I just have to understand what's going on. And so that's what I've gleaned out of what's been going on. So, having said that, it was after COVID and it was time to just get out of the house. I wanted to find somewhere in nature. Shasta wasn't my first choice. I was going to go to the Southwest and, in the Four Corners in Colorado and Utah and Arizona and New York, tons of national parks to go visit. I'd been there before, happy to go again. I just needed to get into nature. Well, when I started to research, you could see that on social media, some of these places might not even be open. And the very next thought in my head, Ann, was Mount Shasta. I
Mm.
had driven by it a few times, knew this much about it.
Yeah.
But from where I was in Santa Rosa, it's like a 4-hour drive. So I get there in the morning or an afternoon. And I decided right around the 4th of July in 2020, I was going to go. And so I didn't have any plans. I found a place to stay for about a week. My son and I were thinking about hooking up the second week because he wasn't working either. I'm going to go to Shasta for a week. Maybe I'll meet you in Tahoe or Reno and we'll just get outside. But after the end of the first week when I was in Shasta, um, there was something there and I hadn't explored all the areas I wanted to. So I reached out to my son and said, I hope you don't mind. I'd like to stay a little longer. He said, no, stay as long as you want. Well, I'm going to accelerate the story here a little bit because from that period on, I stayed for the next 5 weeks and I
Wow.
rarely went to the same place twice. Just I was seeking energetic places and not understanding I was seeking energetic places. I
Yeah.
wasn't looking for anybody in particular. There were stories of Saint Germain coming out of the forest and passing his information along. I think maybe in like the 10th day I was there, I started having those thoughts that, look, I don't follow the paths anybody else does out here anyway. Just if there's somebody here, it's just me out here. Come on, let's connect. Well, I was going to have something that was going to kind of be like that, but not at all. The last weekend, I had been to a couple places I hadn't visited, and I was going to figure out what I was going to do for the rest of that weekend. So Friday, By noon, I had already gone to the Gateway Peace Garden, if you know what that is. Cute
Yep.
place to just start your day.
Yep.
And then I went to the very top of where Old Ski Bowl Trailhead is and sat there on one of those four picnic tables, figuring out what am I going to do for the rest of this weekend. So it's Friday. As I'm looking at the mountain, it's now noon. So the sun is overhead and it's starting to cast some shadows on both Shasta and Shastina off to the left. I'm thinking, some of those look like they could be cave openings. So my curiosity is piqued enough that, okay, I'm going to pick one day because it doesn't look that far to get there. It's not really on the trail, but that doesn't stop me. Um, I'm going to figure out a day I'm going to visit that. But I also heard about Black Butte, which is nearby, adjacent. It's 6,500 feet to the peak, but you can hike it. Everything online says don't do it because there's really no trail and it's just nothing but loose slag. So 2 steps forward, slide 1 step back. This is kind of the nature of this hike. But I'm determined and I'm going to do it. So I decide I'm going to do that on Saturday. And then Sunday, I'll come back here and go explore that on my own. So after a 6 hour hike to get to the top of Black Butte, which I did alone, don't do that. Um, I was exhausted. It, and every other day, I should point out, I didn't understand how palpable the energy in Shasta was until the end of week 2. And here's how I came to that conclusion. I had seen this other couple about my age, and they'd been hiking, and we would cross paths during the course of the week. That Friday, I had seen them up there at Ski Bowl Trail. Kind of, I could tell they were saying their goodbyes to the mountain. And they had remarked on how physically they felt like charged. And it was at that moment that all that kicked into me. Look, Lowell, you've been hiking like you're 21 years old every day with no days to recover in between, elevation changes of all kinds. And yet the next day you get up and you do it all over again like nothing bothered you. I didn't understand that until then. And it was even remarkable to me.
Yeah.
Look, I am not 21 years old hiking around there. I was into my 60s when I was doing this, but I
Wow.
didn't feel like it. There is something palpable about the energy in Shasta that if you just quiet yourself, you can't help but connect to it. And
Yeah.
so as I was hiking around these places, it was these energetic places that drew me in.
Yeah.
I had hoped I'd find somebody that wasn't what I was looking for. So by the time I was going to go have this experience you're referring to, I had only heard about Telos earlier in this visit. I didn't even know about Telos until
Oh,
I
wow.
got there. I had heard something about the Lemurians because during the month right before I visited, I was into researching some of my past life regressions, and Atlantis was the subject of the day. Well, you really can't understand Atlantis without having some sense of the Lemurians, but that was my frame of reference. My
And for
first encounter
those of
with
us who don't,
Telos,
yeah, for the
go ahead.
for people in our community who might not have heard of the Lemurians or Telos, can you just give a quick like who they are and the story?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
yeah,
trying
I
to
know.
keep
Just
this
like
to 45 minutes, but um,
I know. It's so fascinating. But
the
yeah, but just
Lemurians
like,
were an earlier civilization that had been here really pre-Atlantis, but I mean, they overlapped, those civilizations overlapped. But during, the fall, this is when a lot of land masses changed. Lemuria sunk from wherever it was. Atlantis sunk from wherever it was. And those people that were to survive that from the Lemurian colonies chose Shasta. And it was part of the Lemurian property back then along that western side of North America. Um, and they still had to petition, was it the Agartha network for permission to build their city there. Once they obtained the permission, they started to store all of their records, not just from Lemurian history, but all kinds of galactic records that we had been storing here, and moved them into that space. Provisions were made for 2 million Lemurians, but in the end, it happened so quickly, 25,000 of them made it.
Wow.
So they've been posted up in a higher dimension in what we consider Telos as their capital city in Mount Shasta. Now, what I want to clarify is Telos was actually a whole darn territory of Lemuria, and it covered a lot of Western United States. Sorry. That's why people that have been to Sedona that think that they have sensed familiar energy, well, if you have any Lemurian in you at all, there's really a good reason for that, because there were Lemurian temples in that part of the country as well. So
Mm.
this day I decided to go there on Sunday. I'll leave behind all the things that led up to it, because the day before I'd finally gotten tired enough that I decided I was just going to lay in bed on Sunday morning and just do nothing. By 9 o'clock, something inside of me had a different idea, and our clothes were on, and we were headed back there by 10 o'clock.
Oh,
A
wow.
little before noon, I had taken a photograph from where I'd parked the car. And you know, if you've been there, this is a popular place.
Yeah.
This time on a Sunday morning, there are families, couples, the parking lot's usually full. People are starting here to hike, and it was just another day like that. Fortunately, I found a place to park and started off in the direction I was going to head. Now, I saw people that were going to go up to the ski bowl trail, but they were more interested in the elevation gain. I was more interested in some spaces I was seeing, like on the face of Shastina, that looked like they could be cave openings. And so that's the direction I went. As I started to kind of move away from where the crowds were and make my way off trail, that's when I began to sense these energetic places. It won't be until the second year I come back that when I go back and visit these places, I'll see that there's anomalies here I didn't notice the first time.
Mm.
This was the place of an avalanche in the early 90s that took out a lot of this, and it didn't leave much growth behind. So, what trees and overgrowth has been here now has respawned since that event. So, when you see these trees in the middle of almost like intentional rocks around them, and like overgrowth, greenery around this that just looks like it was put here by God. There were lots of them. I didn't notice the physicality of it till the second year when I came back. I went, look at all the green around there. It's not everywhere. Every one of those ended up being something energetic. So as I moved to the first one, I have this um, process that I do, understanding I'm a light worker and that my job is to anchor light here, not to take anything from the mountain. You'll get something in exchange. My job is to anchor light there. That's what I do. So I have a process by which I do that. And when I felt this energetic place, I decided I was going to stop here for a moment and do that very thing. Well, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed another one of these places with a little higher elevation. And so I moved over there and I was going to begin the process again until, oh, wait a minute. I see one more place like right against the rock. And it looked like there were these three big boulders that came out and made this like little area. Here's the mountain back. And as I stepped over the mountain or this boulder, I looked back in the direction I was coming through, and way over there is the parking lot. There's nowhere, unless somebody really knows where I am, no one knows I'm here. And so I plant my light here. And then I sit down. My back is up against the mountain. The only thing between me and it is whatever dried brush is there. I had some grapes and some water, and so I was sitting here enjoying that and listening to music in my earpods. And as soon as I had finished the water and the grapes and put them away, all of a sudden the music stopped. So I sat up because I always carry my phone in my back pocket. And when I took it out and looked at it, there's no power. And at the same time, I feel a breeze from behind me. And when I turn around, wherever I was leaning up against, there is now a hole that if I stood up is taller than I am. And so I kind of get to my feet and I can see there's a little rise from where I am, and then it goes like down into the dark. As my eyes were adjusting to the light, it looked like there was somebody down there. And that at that instant, somebody asked, "Do you wish to see Telos?" Well, your adrenaline gets going and you're a little supercharged, but oh yeah, do I ever want to see it? I didn't know what it was, but yes, sign me up. I started making my way down, and later it'll come to me. This is clearly a former lava tube, and this is the inside. As I'm making my way down, and I can absolutely tell there is somebody down there. I guess from what I can see, given the light conditions, it's another adult-sized person. I'm guessing I'm 6 feet tall. He's a little bit taller than I am. And as I get closer, he's not 6 feet. This person's at least two heads taller than I am, dressed in like this white, it's not really a gown. I don't know how to describe it, but it was white. He had these ribbons, different colored ribbons on it. And so I thought maybe that was some kind of Lemurian bling. That's how you dress this up. Or was it indicative of some type of position that he held? I didn't know. But as I got closer, he said, "You can call me Alex." I said, "Well, that'll be easy to remember. That's my son's name." He goes, "Yeah, we know about your son. Follow me." And so on our way down this escalation that's going downward, I can see where we're going. There's light coming from the other end. And as we get closer, he's describing the levels of Telos, what is where, what the governance is, who the Council of 13 is. And as we get almost to the bottom where this is starting to open up and get a lot lighter, I turned around to look where I came from. There's no light.
Wow.
I don't know where I came from. It would take me months before I would understand the nature of a portal opening and closing. That's what happened. So now when we get to this lower space, I'll call this area a staging area because I don't know what else to call it. And in this area, there is to the left of us, well, across the way first, there's 5 more openings to lava tubes. But
Wow.
next to where Alex is standing, there's like this platform. It's probably 6 feet by 6 feet square, and it has what looks like 2 bucket seats on it. There's no console, it's just this. There's another one down there a little bit further, and when I look this way, there's another one over there. Well, while I'm taking all this in, Alex has made his way to sit down in what I consider would be the driver's seat and indicated for me to sit next to him. And as soon as my butt hit the seat, this thing levitated and off we went. Chose
Wow.
that middle pod over there. And again, I can see in the distance, there's light coming this way for wherever we're going. As we get closer to the end of it, you can tell that this tube is lined in rocks or crystals or whatever it is, because
Is
as the light hits it and refracts, it's like a kaleidoscope, and every inch you move keeps changing the light. I didn't want it to end. But
wow.
as I was getting excited by this, all of a sudden, where we ended up was on the first level of Telos. And when
Was
we
the,
came,
by the way, Charles in our group was asking, it was when you were hearing from Alex, was it telepathically or was he actually like speaking?
he was speaking that day. What
Okay.
conversation I heard was in my language, but I'm pretty sure it was for my benefit that day. Because
Okay.
since then, as you know, we speak in them in vibration.
Yeah.
And they don't like to use words. It just gets us all in trouble. Anyway, once we got into this cavity. He took me up where you could get a perspective like those cityscapes you've seen in pictures. I'm looking at the first level of Telos like this. That white thing that you see behind me, this is probably the closest illustration I had to seeing what I saw in the first level. There was a huge white pyramid in the middle of the first level with crystal buildings all around it in a circular configuration. Some were more profound than others. You could see a few pockets of people here and there. And once I finished seeing, there were other details I'll see and notice about later. There was a capstone at the top of that pyramid that's noteworthy. It was white the day I was there. Now, I had no frame of reference until later when I visited Diane Robbins, who's written, I don't know, 3 or 4 books on the topic. Um, she told me that it changes depending on the day of the week. And because it was white, white is the influence. That's why they were wearing white that day. If it had been on a Wednesday, it would have been emerald or green. If it would have been on Saturday, it would have been purple or indigo. So, oh, okay, I see how things work here now. When we left that area to go to where we're going to go next, which is going to be the third level, the whatever this hovercraft was came down low enough so that I could start to see people's faces. And there were 5 or 6 people that I could make eye contact with briefly as I was going by. But Anne, it was like I knew them and they knew me. Like, I don't know how this happened, but this is very familiar to me. We ended up then on the third level and we're overseeing these hydroponic gardens, technology like I've never seen before, growing plants with very little dirt. He explained the process, how the water is fed with is crystal infused in some way, and it perpetuates these crops in a way that it grows them faster. Now, that's still all wonderful to say and a wonderful notion to think of, but my little Capricorn brain's starting to do the math. And from what I understand, the 25,000 that ended up there 30,000 years ago, whatever that time frame was, had grown to, in the books that Diane had read a few decades ago, like 1.2 million. The current thinking is that there's 4.8 Lemurians on the planet in different forms assisting in this process right now. And so my little Capricorn mind wants to understand, let's say it's 1.2 million people. How does that feed all these people? My little 3D mind thinks that, the way that we're used to feeding our bodies, I don't know how you do that. It was going to take me a little bit more time to understand there were other layers of nuance you're going to have to understand first, Lowell. And the first that's very important is that your body is going through a change right now. I'm sure you've spoken about this many times about the light quotient that we've been receiving now and the upgrades that we're getting because we're getting a whole nother spectrum of light that our little physical forms were not suited for, but they're adapting. When we reach the level that they are in Telos, that's a light form. It's a crystalline body. It is not this carbon thing that wears out in 80 to 100 years. I don't know how long they last, but they don't depend on food to maintain their form the way that we do. So they eat because they like to eat. It's not a part of their metabolism. And once that came in, it was clear. It explained a lot of other things to me. But that's a long leap for people to take that have never been there, thinking that, what do you mean about your body is going to become light? Well, yes, kids, it's been that before. If you know you've had other incarnations, you've already been through this before. I'm tickling your Akashic records so that you remember when you did.
Yeah, yeah. I love it. Wow. Absolutely amazing. And so in other words, they didn't need to grow that many things because they weren't eating them for nutrition.
No. Well, who knows how many they feed these days, but it's interesting. all of, I can speak a little bit more about the other levels. I didn't visit them, so I want that to be clear. The first level is most of the accommodations. There are temples on the first level. And what was interesting about it is that although we think it's underground and in some kind of cave, when I was in that space, I could not see the top of whatever it is. I can't see the top. And it's lit like daylight. Now,
Wow.
there's no stream of light coming in here, and explain to me where the light source comes from. And it'll
Wow.
take months for me to understand that the crystals that are there have the capacity to be charged to hold a charge. And when they're holding a light charge, you can get them to last for 500,000 years before it renders itself useless for that use. But that's what's here. It
Wow.
somehow has some circadian cycle about it so that they still have a night and day kind of idea, but it is not influenced by solar
Wow.
light rays.
Wow. That's incredible. Okay, so then, so you're seeing the plants. Was there more? Did they let you stay for a while?
We didn't stay there for very long. He explained what was on some of the other levels as well. The second level is more where people lived and some manufacturing and whatever. Um, they don't call them universities or colleges, but they're learning facilities that level too. 3 and 4 were hydroponic and some gardens. And then the fifth level, here's the place I want to go when this is possible. There are more flora, fauna, animals, some that have been on the surface in the past, some that have never been on the surface in the past,
Wow.
all that live harmoniously. The animals eat vegetarian diets, so they're not consuming one another. I'm looking for the day that that'll be reintroduced on the surface, but I'm more interested in actually going to that zone myself when we vibrate at the level that they do, and we can.
Wow.
And I am not the only one. Pay attention to your vibration, boys and girls, because this kind of contact, as far-fetched as you might think it sounds, is not that far away. Your vibration and your sense of multi-dimensional frameworks makes contact with beyond earth sentience and inner earth people. Those are the byproducts, kids. I promise, if
Yeah.
that's what you want to have, that's contact you want to have, you can have it. I'm sure a lot of you are going to have to deal with our 3D impulses of fear first. If there is a
Yeah.
way for me to erase that from your experience, that is what I would be happy to do. I don't know. Well, I know I can't. I can't do it for the rest of you. I've come to terms with my fear and I'm not afraid of anything. But
Yeah.
that comes because I know what's next. Freaking take me today because I'm good to go. But I, like you, Anne, agreed to be here to assist others and help them understand this transition when there's no one else. There's no talking heads that are interested in being anything but that. They want to
Yeah.
tell you their way, but it's not helping any of the rest of us nurture it for ourselves. I don't
Yes.
want to tether myself to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I have to ask because several people jokingly asked, were they growing chocolate? Everyone wants to know, do they have chocolate in Telos? But but what did you see? Like, what were they
I
actually?
didn't have any, so I can't tell you that.
You couldn't see,
But I
but the
love
plants.
the way a 3D mind works,
I know.
don't you?
I know. Of course, we want to know. Can you get chocolate there?
Yeah.
Ah, it's so
Not
funny.
this time around. So let me, there's one more thing I want to finish before we leave here, because before I leave, I'm going to visit the council chambers. I
Oh,
had noticed this round building when we came in, when we were hovering around, because it was kind of prominent in in front of the front part of the city. And when we got back up to this level, this craft is going to land just outside this. So when you see this building, it's constructed, it's a round building, but it's made of flat crystal panels all the way around. And so the entryway has no door, but it's the equivalent of, say, like double doors, like French doors.
okay.
On this panel and on this panel, I see something etched in them that I have seen before. And I can't put my finger on exactly what it was. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me the first day I arrived in Shasta, um, and it was too late to hike. I thought I was just going to walk down the street, see what's where and why. Walk through some of the shops, and there was one called Blue Star Child Gallery, which is run by a gifted, talented little Japanese girl. And she did these drawings. So this day that I went in there, when I walked into the shop, I saw these shoe covers. Well, I thought that was because of COVID. And I was thinking, well, I don't really want to do that today, but I'll come back in a few days because, yeah, I think there's more to explore. And when I turned to leave, I saw in front of me these 3 feet wide by 10 feet high codes, light codes that she had drawn. She was inspired to draw these. And so when she does them, and she does them without a ruler or without any kind of curvature tools, these are all freehand, and they're so wonderfully symmetrical from one side to the other. I don't know how she does it. So
Wow.
first she draws it out, then she goes back and colors it in. They take months to do.
Wow.
Anyway, there's 3 sections of her store. And so the day that I came back, there's one room in the back, probably 8 by 8. I assume it was originally the office for this space, which she doesn't use for such. She's got 5 of those huge codes in this room with a little pill on them in. So if you
Okay.
wish to go in there and meditate in this space, you can do that. Now, I didn't know that was the purpose of it, and I didn't find it until that day I went back. But once I did, it was early in the morning, so there wasn't anybody else in the store. I went out and asked her if it would be okay if I could go in and meditate in the space. She said, that's what it's for. 20 minutes later, I came out in tears because it was just so powerful and profound. But as I was leaving, the light code on the left-hand side of the door and the light code on the right side of the door matched the light codes that were engraved outside of that space in Telos. And
Wow.
when I said to Alex, that looks really familiar to me, it goes, yeah, yeah, that's Haruko's work. They're accurate. And so we've inscribed them in here. One is the new human blueprint, and one is the new Earth, new Earth codes. They're incredible. Anyway,
Wow. Oh, how
so
incredible.
now I moved into the space, and in the room, there's just a round table in the middle of it with 13 chairs around it. It's the only thing I've seen in here that was made out of wood so far, because this table's incredible. But there's something in the room. There's a physical thing that hits you in the heart center that you can't ignore. And the whole time, it's like, think of the best hug you've ever had.
Mm.
And it's just like pressing into your heart space the whole time you're in here. So my little 3D head's thinking, yeah, if this is where meetings take place, this is where you soften people up first and then conduct your business. It was like that. Then 5 more people entered from that end of the room. There were 2 females on each side flanking a guy. And based on the pictures I've seen, that's a Dama. Now, let me tell you, the pictures that we've seen of him on books do not do that guy justice.
Mm.
And I'm not, I thought one day of maybe trying to do a different AI illustration and try and help people understand what he looks like. I just sense too many people are tied to what they think he looks like already. So let's
Mm.
not spoil that for anybody. Let them hang on to that. One day they'll see him for who he is, and it won't look like that. But anyway, he was like a foot taller than everybody else.
Wow.
They offered me a place to sit at the table, and then 3 of them sat on this side of me, and 3 of them sat on that side of me. And I was going to learn what I'm doing here. They began by explaining a little bit about who each one of them was, briefly, what their name was, and what role they held. So I remembered Alex, easy. I remember Adama because I had some previous information to call on. And I remember the first woman who began to speak, Shyama. Because from this point on, she seems to be chairing this meeting. She's the one that's speaking. And so she begins by explaining that their council is also in harmony with, my thinking. Now, she didn't put it that way because she didn't know that at the time, but she had explained that they understood that the shift was imminent
Okay.
and that they're just waiting for the day to re-engage with the surface because they have things to share with us,
Yeah.
and we certainly have a need for what they have to bring to us, but they were never ever going to expose their frequency and their vibration level to anything lower. The
Mm.
second time I went back to see about visiting Telos after the first time I went, the second year, I got to see Shiama a second time. And she was at the entryway of that vortex I was telling you about.
And
And when
she
I
was the
saw
one
her
who
at
chaired
first,
the meeting. Okay.
I asked, I said, why don't you step on? She goes, well, I can't. And I
Mm.
knew why. She can't drop her density that much to drop into here. And I said, well, I knew immediately when I'd asked the question why she didn't. And I said something like, well, yeah, who would? And she said, well, you did. Oh, okay, yes, I guess I did. Anyway, let me go back and finish what had happened there. So after she began to tell me that they expected this was going to happen, I was jazzed. Look, for the last 6 months, everything that I had been studying, the nature of the solar phenomenon,
Yeah.
the elevated photon energy coming from the central sun and affecting everything is look, all of those things lined up for me to understand that this is coming soon.
Yeah.
And in my gut, it was the winter solstice of 2020.
Mm.
They kind of got the sense it was the same. I came away with that. So, you're kind of excited and terrified all at the same time. Um, we're not done with catastrophic things on the
Yeah.
planet,
Yeah.
but provisions are being made for higher elevated spaces already. Um, we've known a lot of them, but aside from the Glastonburys and Shastas and Sedonas and um, Ayers Rock, all of these places that we sense, more of them are revealing themselves now. And in my mind, these energetic places are no longer meant to be secret. They're meant to be easier to find because we're that close to this shift in Earth's consciousness that we're modifying our behavior to match hers because it's right around the corner. It was never contingent on all us kumbayaing together. She's gone whether we're ready or not. We're just sentient critters hanging on for the ride. But a lot of us are in tune with it already. And it's amazing to me the people I hear from more recently who didn't get any of this for a long time, and all of a sudden something inside of them is energetically changing too. Policemen, attorneys, doctors, who thought that these people would soften up or at least be open-minded enough to
Mhm.
consider that these things outside of my little realm of experience could be true? Yeah, there's something inside of us now that says, damn right it is. Can somebody help us understand? So
Yeah.
when you do these things, and it helps everybody else kind of come into focus. And as I said before, it doesn't mean we're going to have exactly the same experiences. No, it's not. And it's unlikely that you will. However, you're going to have something special. And as part of the tribe, you can come back here and share with the rest of us because it gives validation to what has happened to us. You
Yeah.
really want to hear what's going on. You can't ignore these genuine, authentic
Yeah.
stories that these people have had stored away and nowhere to tell them before. Well, there's a reason why all this is happening now.
Yeah, if you look in the chat, there's many people are sharing how they or someone they knew or and it's amazing. I think it's more and more of us are having uh there's the opportunity for these. So I will tell you, when I went to Shasta, it was several years ago. I went to Shasta and I went to the Peace Garden you mentioned at the beginning of your story. And it was the first time we had just gotten there. My friend that I was traveling with knew about it because it's not really a publicized place.
No.
And we went and I sat down to meditate, my first time meditating at Shasta. And as soon as I closed my eyes, I saw a woman appear, a beautiful woman, all in white, appeared. And she just kind of went like this and then disappeared. And then I meditated. And I didn't know like the significance of that because I wasn't familiar. I didn't know anything about Telos. I didn't know any of the stories. I came out and I told my friend, and she knew, and she said, "Oh, you were greeted by the woman of the mountain." So that is a thing. And was is more
Yes.
compelling to me that I did not know about her and then saw her and was clearly welcomed, which was amazing. Yeah, but anyways, just to confirm, like it is what's incredible is you actually got to go in and experience it. So was there anything was shared with you when you were in the council chambers, when you were in that room, that was something that would be of interest or appropriate to share with the group?
Well, at the end there were a couple other things that they brought up that just blew me away. The second thing she said about, because I wanted to understand, well, why me? Why'd you pick me? Now
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't say those things out loud because you
But
don't want
why?
that energy
Yeah,
to get out there.
yeah.
But I wanted to understand more. The first thing she said, well, we can see that you can hold fifth dimensional awareness. And I didn't know what that meant back then. I have a clear idea of what that means now.
Yeah.
But I didn't then. I was happy to hear it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Then she went on to say, and we understand you're the protector of Gaia. Now,
Mm.
that's a lovely notion and a cool title, but that had been uttered to me 2 years before in an ayahuasca ceremony where Mother Ayahuasca told me that's who I was. How
Oh,
did they know that? How did they hear that? I don't know, but you connect the
wow.
dots multidimensionally if you can. All I
Yeah.
know is that it resonated and they knew something that only I, because I'd never repeated any of that yet, they
Yeah.
knew.
Okay.
And then the last was they had asked when the time came that would I be willing to be an emissary or an ambassador to help the transition between what's below the surface and what's on the surface.
Yeah.
And I've grown to understand that's not just a role I'll play, there's more of you. But I want to put that in perspective too.
Yeah.
After these things begin, even with inner earth beings, and there's a lot of them, we are ambassadors. It's
Mhm.
when Dave Wallace crossed my path and I learned how to communicate with beyond earth sentience.
Yeah.
Now we know what our role is. Look, I'm here as a communicator for those beings that are coming here and doing their own explorations. Do you not really think that we're not being visited by beings from somewhere else in higher dimensions because they're doing their own little fam trips to Earth?
Mhm.
Yes, they want to understand what it's like here so they can go back and tell their civilizations before they
Right.
come to visit. So we're not just connecting them, we're connecting to inner earth realms as well. And here's where it all kind of gets multidimensionally mucky because once we connect
Multidimensionally
to it
amazing.
all of these things are just byproducts. If you
Yeah.
want to sit around and argue whether you think there's UFOs in the air, let me tell you, I'm 15 steps ahead of you. I can tell you they're here already, guys. And if you want to go out, I can point you in a direction. But I even went so far as to, once I'd been on some UFO tours and I'd seen them in the sky, and too many for this to be anything but what it is, I
Yeah.
had bought an infrared camera. And over time, and I had so much evidence, I finally got tired of doing it. I left
Yeah.
it with somebody else. Here, it's your turn
Yeah.
because, man, you go out on almost any night and just point it at a spot in the sky. Pick Vega, pick something that you can see, and I
Yeah.
promise you'll see traffic.
Yeah. No, I get that at a certain point, the conversation of is it true or not becomes less interesting because it is no longer a question in your own mind. And then it becomes, where do we go from here? Yeah.
Well, here's now where contact begins. Those
Mhm.
blue orbs that are coming in our direction, I can begin to tell you about what telomeres are. And if you haven't had experiences and you want them, I can tell you how you can start to nurture that because all of this is accelerating, isn't it?
Oh my gosh. And that is a beautiful lead in because I need to ask you, how can people find you? So you said you can share things. What is your, how should people find you?
The easiest way, you can find my website and I can give you the cryptic name for it, but if you type lowelljohnson.info,
Okay.
it'll take you right to my website.
Okay, great. Okay. And it's
Yes.
Lowell, Lowell Johnson with an H
Yes.
dot info is how to get to
Yes.
you. Perfect. Perfect.
Yes.
Well, this has been as fun and amazing as I knew it would be, even more so. So thank you so, so much for coming and
You're
joining.
welcome. I don't think this is the last one we're going to do. And there's more stuff that we need to exchange. And this was just all about Lowell talking about his story. But I sense that there's other things that we're supposed to exchange. So
Fantastic.
we'll figure out a time to do that.
I love it. I love it. And
Okay.
whatever comes up, I'm happy to let everybody in on it. So
Great.
sounds incredible. Yeah, no, I love it, Lowell. Thank you so much. And everybody in the comments, you can tell, is so fired up, Lowell. This is a conversation we needed to have. So thank you
Thank you.
so much for being here. We appreciate you.
Namaste.
All right. And everybody, thank you for being here. Another incredible, fun morning together. We will be together again. You know, Wisdom Soup is always on the second Thursday of the week. We usually do it at 10 a.m. Pacific. And we will look forward very much to being together again next time. Thank you, Lowell. Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.